Hello and welcome to S109, Operational Contract Support. Do you notice anything funny about the photo in this picture? Do you think the unit got what they asked for? This is a shortened version of this voiceover. Please note the key takeaways for this lesson. Much of the content of this lesson comes from JP 4-10 and ATP 4-71, as well as your course readings. Army Materiel Command provides significant support to the deployed operating force with its subordinate units. Army Contracting Command executes system support, external support, and theater support contracting to deployed Army forces through its subordinate commands. The MIC is a subordinate command within the ACC. It provides installation and power projection support. The CSB is typically allocated to a theater army, field army, and Army Corps. Two Corps-aligned CSBs are attached to the MIC when not deployed. Contracting battalions are primarily aligned to divisions. They exercise C2 over their organic units. These battalions are often aligned with the TSC or ESC. Contracting teams or detachments may provide direct support to individual maneuver BCTs, and they are often aligned with sustainment brigades. Here are some key terms that apply to operational contract support. A contract is the legally binding agreement between the government and the contractor. A defense contractor is the individual or organization that enters into a contract with the government. The KO is the government official with the legal authority to write, administer, and terminate contracts for the government. CORs are typically U.S. service members or government civilians who are trained to monitor contract performance. The Quality Assurance Surveillance Plan, or QASP, is the document they use to assess contractor performance. CORs must be nominated by the commander and appointed by the KO. OCS is the process of planning for and obtaining supplies, services, and construction from commercial sources in support of joint operations. In our doctrine, we have three sub-functions to OCS. They are contract support integration, contracting support, and contractor management. Most of this class focuses on contractor management, but we will talk about the other aspects of the other subordinate functions as well. OCS planning and execution require a programmatic approach on behalf of the JFC and supporting combatant commands, service components, combat support agencies, and their associated contracting organizations. Take some time to review this slide. Notice that contracted support is not just about logistics. It can include a variety of non-logistics support as well. It is important to understand the different types of contracted support commonly used in support of combatant commander-directed operations. This construct breaks support contracts into three categories. Theater support contracts are those that provide goods, services, and minor construction, usually from local vendors, to meet the requirements of deployed units. System support contracts are prearranged contracts typically awarded by program executive officers. These contracts provide specific support for Army systems during their life cycle. External support contracts provide both logistics support and non-logistics support to deployed units. This might include transportation, base operating support, or even physical security. It is important to know the basic contract types. Firm fixed price contracts are usually preferred by the government because the contractor assumes the risk. Issues with performance do not affect the cost to the government, especially if the contractor underestimates the labor and material costs. Cost reimbursement contracts place risk on the government. We use these contracts when our requirements cannot be sufficiently defined. Time and material contracts are based on negotiated rates for labor and materials. These contracts are used when we cannot determine the extent or duration of the work required. IDIQ contracts are used when the government cannot predetermine the precise quantity of supplies or services required. This contract may be appropriate when recurring needs are anticipated. Legal jurisdiction over contractor personnel varies depending on the contractor's nationality and designation. CAF stands for Civilians Authorized to Accompany the Force. CAF contractors have certain rights and privileges as defined in their LOA or Letter of Authorization. Normally, local national contract employees are subject to local laws, while U.S. citizens and third country national or TCN CAF may or may not be subject to local laws depending on existing SOFAs, that's a status of force agreement, or other security agreements. CAF, with some exceptions, are subject to U.S. federal law, to include UCMJ jurisdiction, while minor CAF discipline infractions are normally handled by the contractor firm. Serious CAF discipline infractions can and should be addressed through the military legal and/or Department of Justice channels. In any case, before commanders determine if disciplinary actions are necessary for CAF, they should first talk with their SGA and the government contract oversight team. Contractors are prohibited from doing things that are considered to be inherently governmental. They cannot supervise government employees. They cannot communicate to Congress on behalf of the Department of Defense or the Army. They cannot obligate government resources. If a contractor needs to purchase supplies, for example, this must be written into the contract. And, perhaps most importantly, a contractor cannot perform military functions and engage in kinetic operations. They have a right to self-defense, but this does not extend to engaging in combat. Earlier I mentioned that contractor management is one of the three subfunctions of OCS. Contractor management is the oversight and integration of contractor personnel and associated equipment in support of military operations. The 5 phases of CMP in many ways mirror the phases that soldiers and units follow with respect to deployment and redeployment. In the planning phase, the focus is placed on risk management and the impact of contractors on the battlefield. In phase 2, pre-deployment preparation actions must be taken by the government to ensure that contractors meet combatant commander requirements. This is much like pre-deployment processing that MTO units go through. Of importance is the Letter of Authorization, or LOA. This document authorizes contractor travel and outlines the terms and conditions of the contract. In Phase 3, deployment and reception, contractors and their equipment are received in theater. This is similar to the manner in which units go through RSO&I. In theater management includes not only performance monitoring by CORs, but the accountability and force protection of contractors. Phase 5, redeployment, involves the movement of contractors and their equipment out of the operational area upon completion of their period of performance. Spot ES is an automated system that provides theater-wide visibility of contractors in one common system. CORs are required to maintain by-name accountability of contractors using Spot. Here are some parting thoughts. OCS is a unit responsibility. You need to include OCS into your plans from the beginning. This starts with clearly articulating your requirements. If performance is not satisfactory, the commander should work with the CORs that he or she has carefully selected and nominated. The commander must ensure CORs are fully trained. A commander must also understand his or her legal limits. Contractors are not soldiers. Be aware of what can and cannot be done legally to enforce good order and discipline. As I said before, articulating your requirements clearly is very important. Defense contractors are not subject to mission command and do not understand the commander's intent. When you define your requirements, make sure to spell check.